I'm going to start by telling you a story. I think it's important because I think we've all got a story to tell why we're here tonight. I've got a political story, I've been on a bit of a political journey. So let me tell you just a little bit about my journey and where it started and where I've ended up talking to you lot tonight. So I was born in a place called Ashfield. Ashfield is the capital of common sense. It's true. That is James Cameron. It's if anybody knows the M1 motorway, junction 28, just come off there, and it's a place called Ashfield. It's where I was born. It's where my kids were born. It's where I've lived. I've never lived more than 5 miles from where I was born. I love the place, and we have some famous sons in Ashfield, famous people. Probably the most famous people are Harold Larwood and Bill Vose. These were cricketers back in the 1920s. I think there's a few blokes in there who could remember them. Where are you? Over there. Yeah, these were cricketers that were coal miners and cricketers, and they played for Nottinghamshire, and they played for England as well. In fact, they played in the 1932-33 Bodyline series in Australia, and they the famous Bodyline series, and won the Ashes. These were great men, hard men. And they are probably the most famous sons in Ashfield. We've got a few others, locals, a few locals. We've got D.H. Lawrence, who was in my previous constituency before Ashfield got changed. He wrote many a good book in the last century. He wrote a book called Lady Chatterley's Lover, which was actually based in Ashfield, where I live. Now, I was brought up on a strict political diet of Dennis Skinner, Arthur Scargill and Tony Benn. But growing up in my house in the 1970s, my dad was a coal miner. My granddad was a coal miner. Every single male member of our family worked down the pits. So we were brought up on a strict political diet of Skinner, Scargill and Tony Benn. When they came on the radio, the wireless, as we said, or the TV, you had to shut up because these are the men that we worship. We had to listen to these men. And you know what? I went to see Skinner, Scargill and Tony Benn in 1984 during the miners' strike. My dad was a striking miner. I'd be about 16 or 17 at the time. And Skinner, Scargill and Benn, they were probably the best speakers I've ever heard in my life. I thought they was part of the solution, these people. But the best speaker by a million miles, Tony Benn was brilliant, by the way. And Dennis Skinner was a brilliant speaker. Really good. Whether you agree with them or not, they were brilliant. But the best speaker by a million miles was Arthur Scargill. Unbelievable. Seen him many, many times during the miners' strike, and it could hold an audience just like that. Yeah. Absolutely superb. But growing up in the 70s, listening to these people in the early 80s, in a little village where I lived, it was a place called Huthwaite in Nottinghamshire. It was a mining village. We had one coal mine. This was typical in Nottinghamshire and South Yorkshire and Derbyshire. These two ladies here will tell you this. It was a coal mine for the men. It was a factory for the women. There was a few pubs, a couple of schools. And with the coal mine came a football team, a rugby team, a cricket team. You had a sports and social club. You had a welfare where they'd have a do-on a Saturday night, a gig, a turn or whatever. You had a bowling green, you had tennis courts. That was a community. We had a mining community, and we loved that. And growing up in the 70s, I never wanted to live anywhere else because we got everything. My dad had got a job, my mum had got a job, we got schools. If we wanted to do anything, we could go and do it on the bowling green. The cricket, we had a brass band, and we had a proper bandstand as well in our local park. It was absolutely brilliant. That was our world. That was a community. That was a mining community. And then the nasty Maggie came along. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is it. This is what I want to tell you. This is my journey because later I forgave her. She came along. The Tory government did, and as sort of retribution for the 1974 strike. They started to close coal mines in our area. And I remember, I never wanted to go down the pit really, and I always remember, people in my family used to say when you're 8, 9 year old, work hard at school lad, do well, do your 11 plus. If you do 11 plus, can you remember that anybody, 11 plus? Yeah. Do your 11 plus, if you pass that you can go to grammar school, local grammar school, and if you go to grammar school there is a chance you may go to university. If you go to university, you may then get a better job and not have to go down the pit with your dad. Simple as that, that's what it was. But just a year before was due to take our 11 plus, they took it off the curriculum. So I went to the local comprehensive school, Ashfield Comp, with my mates, had a great time, and just a few years later, I was down the pit with my dad as a teenager. And I always remember, when I'd been 13, 14 years old, listening to my dad at 4:30 in the morning, his alarm clock would go off. He'd get up at 4:30, he'd go downstairs, he'd make the fire, with a coal fire, everybody had a coal fire. He'd make his sandwiches, he'd have a cup of tea, and then he'd walk to the pit, which was literally 3 minutes away. He'd go to the pit and do his shift, and then come back later on that afternoon. And as a 13, 14-year-old, you're listening to that. You're listening to that alarm clock go off. You're listening to your dad get up. You're listening to make the fires, going to work. And then just a couple of hours later, you listen to your mum get up. Your mum gets you up. She makes you breakfast. I've got 2 sisters. She then goes to the factory to make clothes. So just a few years later, my dad's knocking on my door and saying, "Come on, lad, we're going to work." He'd take me to work. I'd go with my dad and do a shift underground with my dad. And my 2 sisters, bless them, they go with my mother to the local factory. They go to, what's up, Jim? They go. So that's what it was in our village. It was a sense of community. We all had a specific pathway. We knew where I was going. But I look at young people nowadays in our country, and I really do feel sorry for them. There are a lot more opportunities, but we had that clear pathway. When I went to school in the morning, I saw that coal mine, and I knew I was going there. So I knew that's what I had to do to buy a car, to have a house, to have a family, to pay my bills, and do whatever I wanted. Same with my sisters. But nowadays, our young people don't have that. They don't have the role models what we had. Unfortunately, some young people, they are in households where it may be 2nd or 3rd generation where they've not seen anybody go to work in the household. I remember coming home from school and listening to my mum and dad at the dinner table. My dad would talk about his day at the pit, his shift. My mother would talk about her day at the factory. And they would talk about these characters that they work with. My dad would talk about like Nobby, Taffy, Jock, Paddy. They worked with down the pit. These were real people. My mum would talk about their wives at the local factory, and I wanted to meet these people. So it sort of followed that, I went to school. In my class at school, every single person in my class, their dads worked down the local pit, and their mums worked at the local factory. It was brilliant. Like I say, Maggie came along, about the Conservative government, and sort of, started closing mines, etc. And we had to blame somebody, and unfortunately, we had to blame Maggie, we had to blame the Conservative government, and all that sort of stuff. But fast forward a few years, I sort of forgave Maggie for this. I had a road to Damascus moment, because I was in the Labour Party at age 16 during the miners' strike. I was a revolutionary. I wanted to bring the Tory government down. I wanted to do all this. I was a proper lefty. I was a militant member. I used to sell the militant newspaper on the local marketplace. I used to do all this sort of stuff. But I later found out that Scargill, Skinner and Tony Benn, they weren't the solution. They were part of the problem. They really were part of the problem. It took me a long time to wake up to this fact. And I tell you when it took me, after I worked down the pit, I worked at Citizen Advice Bureau in Ashfield. And the one thing I remember about working for the Citizens Advice Bureau was we would see people with debt problems, with housing problems, with benefit problems and stuff like that. They'd come in and we'd sort out the debt, the rent arrears, go to court with them to stop a housing possession and stuff like that. And I'd walk away at the end of the day thinking, wow, what a good job I've done. I've helped these people, really helped these people have a better life. But fast forward 10 years, and I'm seeing the sons and daughters of these same people coming in with the same problems, with debt, with housing problems, with rent arrears, with benefit problems. And I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, we've not actually done any good here. All we've done is took one set of problems from the children, from mum and dad, and passed them on to the children 10 years later. That is not progress. That is not progress, because when I worked down the pits, the men I worked with, they weren't some rabid revolutionary nut jobs that wanted to bring the government down. They were just decent, hard-working men who wanted the best for the family. They wanted to pay their mortgage or their rent. They wanted their kids to go to a decent school. They wanted a decent local hospital. And more importantly, all they wanted was for their kids to do a little bit better in life than them. And that is progress. As if your kids can do a little bit better than you, then you've made some progress. And unfortunately, I think this is probably the first generation now where kids are doing worse than their mum and dads, and that's an absolute scandal. And the people I blame for this, in retrospect, is Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. Because in 1997, when they swept to this landslide victory, one of the first things they did was introduce a tax credit system. The tax credit system meant that it dragged people out of poverty overnight straight away, which seems incredibly kind to top people's wages up. But what it meant was that people could go from working full-time to 16 hours a week and get the same wage. Now, that's not very intelligent, I don't think, in this country. So obviously people are going to stop working 40 hours, work 16 hours, get their wages topped up, get the same amount of money. I think it's great. And these same people are then contacting me and saying, well, my kids have left school, gone to university, or they've been married or whatever, and all my benefits have stopped. And now I'm on minimum wage in an entry-level job on 16 hours a week, and I can't afford to live. Not only that, the unintended consequence of these people is that they've not been promoted, they've not got them extra qualifications, they've not gone through a career progression or anything like that. They're 50, 55 years old and they're stuck on a minimum wage job. What a waste of somebody's life, and that's all through the tax credit system. It's an absolute shame. And meanwhile, Blair's opened the floodgates to mass immigration from Europe. These people have come from Eastern Europe, don't blame them. They've got the jobs, they've worked hard, they know our streets are paved with gold, and they still are. They've got all the promotions, all the best jobs, and guess what? They're doing much better than what we are these days. It's an absolute scandal. Now, when I was in the Labour Party, I became a Labour councillor in 2015. And I was always at odds with the local Labour group because they was all Momentum members. And I'm telling you all this because at the moment, Reform UK, we've got the Tory votes that's going to come to us, but the real votes we want now is the Labour votes, and they are coming to us, believe me, in vast numbers. And I remember being at a Labour group meeting back in 2018, and one of the Momentum members said to me, "Oi, Anderson, yeah, have you ever read the works of Karl Marx?" I'm thinking, is that Groucho Marx? Is it one of the Marx brothers? I said, well, funnily enough, mate, I have not. He said, why don't you fuck off then and join the Tory party? So I thought, you know what, mate, that's not a bad idea. So I gets up in the meeting, and they all hated me. I went to join the Tory party that week. And just a year later, I was that man's MP. So a Tory MP at that. So the one thing about the Labour Party, they do give great career advice. Yeah, you can clap.
So, Richard, it's been your night here tonight. Has it been good?
It's been absolutely fantastic. We've had 160 people here that's actually attended tonight. Everybody's had a wonderful time. We had Lee Anderson here, we've had Peter Whittle, a former member of the London Assembly, and it's been a fantastic evening, and everybody that come here tonight is going to join up.
Which is the purpose of the evening, isn't it? For everybody to join up.
Yes, I mean, basically they wouldn't have come here tonight if they wasn't interested in reform.
Yes.
So, they've come here to support me, and it's been a fantastic evening. Everybody that I've actually spoke to have had a wonderful evening.
Well, why did you first decide that you wanted to get involved with reform?
Well, basically, I've known Nigel Farage for 15 years,
yes,
and I used to be a UKIP member,
yes,
15 years ago, and the party got a bit out of control. It started to get a lot of racist people in the party, and that's why Nigel Farage actually resigned, because Nigel Farage is not a racist.
No.
And all these boats coming over, all that Nigel is saying is we need to control immigration. But these people are coming in on the boats. Why, if they had anything to hide, why would they throw their passport in the sea? It just doesn't make sense. So what we need controlled immigration, and we need, people. We need to know who they are, what they're coming here for, what their intentions are. So all that Reform are saying, let's understand who these people are.
Absolutely.
We get accused of being racist as a party, but we're not. Just because we say we want controlled immigration, we're racist, which is absolutely unbelievable.
And also, it's numbers, isn't it? It's too many people, can't get doctor's appointments and all of that stuff.
I mean, my grandson actually, he was taken into hospital over the weekend, but it took literally 20 phone calls, and he was waiting in A&E for nearly 14 hours.
Yes.
A young child of 4 years old.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I never had that when we were kids.
No.
It's just unbelievable. My daughter's got 3 children.
Yes.
She can't even get her children into the local school.
Yes.
It's absolutely madness, seriously.
But it's been a good night, and Lee Anderson did a great speech, didn't he?
Yeah, Lee is a fantastic man. I mean, what you see with Lee is what you get.
Yes.
And he's a great hero of mine, and I'm so pleased that he actually left the Conservatives and come and join Reform.
So the big thing for everybody watching this is vote Reform, yeah?
Vote Reform, vote Reform. You won't regret it. We've now got, you know, the other thing is that, you know, what people got to remember is America is a very important country.
Yes.
One of the most powerful countries in the world. And Nigel Farage has got a personal relationship with Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
Now, Keir Starmer hasn't got that.
Yeah.
And the way Keir Starmer's going, antagonising Mr Putin, he's going to get us all blown up in a minute.
Yes.
Well, I can honestly say to you, with the relationship that Mr Farage has got with Donald Trump, that won't happen. So we need to get the Reform Party up and running. We need to get Nigel Farage into number 10.
Yes.
And the place will be a better country.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.